Ladies and gentlemen, in this Red Gaming Sitcom video we're going to be discussing a recent interview that Guerilla Games have given regarding Killzone Shadowfall for the PS4, in which they give some insights in not only the development of the PlayStation 4's hardware and iterations over prototypes over time, but also how they finally come to their end result of Killzone and what development steps they started to take in. So, Guerilla have been extremely instrumental in the PlayStation 4's development, not only because they helped Sony with feedback, for example, on the controller, and we'll discuss that in a moment, but I'm pretty sure most of you will be aware of the white paper, also known, of course, as Killzone Shadowfall Postmortem. Now, those white papers, there were two of them, one concerning the main system, for example, textures, overall game performance and so on, another one discussing lighting and so on. If you're curious, you could always search Killzone on the channel or Postmortem and it'll pop straight up, but they use this data to give it to developers so that those developers would then have an idea of how to better optimize the titles for the memory, for the CPU, and so on, and they actually gave readouts. This actually turned out to be extremely helpful for the technically minded among us, because we could actually get a rough idea of what the system was doing and what faults and what insights that we could learn compared to simply looking at the specs raw on the table and saying, okay, well, I don't know what's allocated to what. Anyway, Nick Bolgers was actually the one who was interviewed, and he said, and I quote, "We knew pretty early on that we wanted to be a launch title. We knew it was very inevitable that we were going to be on a new platform, so quite early on, about 2.5 years ago, we said, you know what, we want to be a launch title, we want to be on the next gen console. The reason for that is that Killzone, it's all about the graphics and the gameplay, obviously, but being able to do that on a new platform is just an amazing chance. I mean, we really wanted to go in there and we really wanted to get in early. The really scary part is all the tools and all the stuff we wanted previously had to go out the window. We had to redo everything. We had the engine that we were rebuilding to fit the next gen, you know, the new architecture and all that sort of stuff. All the assets had to be redone, weapons had to be redone, the animation system had to be rebuilt, and it was a lot like leaving your save data for something new and scary. He added that the architecture is really cool because it's a lot easier to develop for. You get a lot more memory, you get more hard drive space, and you get more processing power, so the architecture is easier. It's all a lot more demanding because the production effort needed to make a next-gen game is not doubled, it's quadrupled, because of everything you need to look to make much better. It takes a lot more people, and it takes a lot more communication. So it does make more things easier from a technical standpoint, but from a professional standpoint it makes things a lot harder. One of the things we wanted to improve upon was the controllers. I personally feel that in the previous Killzones, the DualShock was always good, but when you looked at other controllers, they had the edge. We really worked together with Mark from Sony, that would be, on the improving the controller. For example, on the triggers, we wanted better triggers. They previously reverted inwards, where in a shooter game, that's not very good. Your fingers slip off. Off topic, well, just out of context for a second, or out of quote, I say out of context. I actually remember that there was actually quite a big thing about third-party trigger extensions being sold for the DualShock pads, and a couple of people I know actually bought them because they said it was quite uncomfortable actually when it would come to a lot of first-person shooting if you're playing for long periods of time. But anyway, we really pushed them to make better triggers that go up. Also stuff like the touchpads. When I first saw it on the prototype controller, I was like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? It's not an iPhone game. But I'm not really surprised with how well the little things work. I'm not promoting it, I don't have to sell that controller, but I'm really happy with how well it works in that game. Everything else works now. From response time, the dead zones, everything is better. The lag is gone, and that's what makes Killzone a better game. while developing the PS4 and our games as well, we had a lot of prototypes and we played around with them a lot as well. In one, they had replaced all the buttons with touch sensitive, and we just said no. This dialogue between former holder and studio is, of course, incredibly important from the perspective of the users. And this is out of quote, by the way. Previously, we know that Sony had worked a lot on the PlayStation 3 in pure isolation. This included the architecture, this included the controllers, this included everything even up to how the damn thing looked. And it's fair to say that the system turned out to be pretty good in the end, but it did have lacking areas. We're discussing them slowly, of course, in the post-mortem videos that I'm releasing, but it had a number of issues. One of them, of course, being hard to develop for, lack of easy memory, controllers aren't exactly maybe as sprightly, let's use that word, as what you'd hope as well. This shows you the challenge of making a next generation game, moving from, say, the PS3 to the PlayStation 4. Now obviously there are some things that you can transfer over. On the other hand, there's also a hell of a lot of programming that you can't. Of course, we know that, for example, the SPEs in many ways of the PlayStation 4 of PlayStation 3 cell processor have a lot of characteristics with the architecture of the GCN cores, with the stream processors, and they can be utilized to do a lot of the compute work. And of course, that's what developers like Santa Monica, like Guerilla, and so on were doing with the previous generation. They were pushing the SPEs, they were pushing the cell processor and offloading a lot of the workload. Now that's not the case. The problem is now that also, because you've got so much higher fidelity, because now you've got so much greater level of detail that you can cram into a level, it's becoming increasingly hard to just say, we're just going to kind of smudge this area. We're going to use like a lower resolution texture here. We're going to kind of just fudge the background details a little bit because people, they won't notice it too much. It's not too much of a big deal. It'll all kind of blend in. The problem is it doesn't, because when you're utilizing a high resolution engine, when everything else looks amazing and then the lighting's really good, an area that an artist would typically be able to somewhat skimp on in terms of time, they can't really do that anymore because it's going to stick out like an absolute sore thumb. Therefore, they're going to have to start really anything visible, they're going to have to spend a lot more time on, and that obviously takes a lot more time in terms of games development. It also means that they're going to have to make sure that all of the assets are exactly how they want. They can't just kind of throw it together at the last minute. Another problem that this makes, of course, that you can guess, is that as the formats move forward, people become a lot less tolerant of things such as frames per second drops, lower resolution, item duplication. In other words, why the hell is that exact same tree growing all over the same bloody area of the woods? Why? And why is it that every third tree has the same little bit of moss on it? People really start to tolerate that a hell of a lot less because it just trashes immersion in games. I don't know about you, but it's just, clipping as well. That's another big thing in games, is that, I've used this example a few times, but I love Far Cry 3, I really do. But every time I play the damn thing, it's just the clipping when you're driving a vehicle, the grass coming through the bottom. When I first played it, when I very first played that game, and I got in a car, and that happened to me, I saw a little bit of the grass kind of waving up, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. The car I'm in must be damaged. It must be missing some of the floor. And I just had this immediate, like, Flintstones vibe. And I was just like, oh, that's kind of cool. We're in this damaged island, so, the bottom of the floor must be... No, never mind. The grass is just literally glitching through the bottom. And stuff like that just trashes an immersion. You can have an incredible looking game, but issues like that just really grate on my nerves. Anyway, I think we've spoken about everything that I've said in the interview. hopefully you've enjoyed the somewhat brief video. I'm going to get going, so I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.